The truth is, Hamza hasn't really affected my life much at all. So I thought I was going somewhat harder at life. I thought I was someone who really cared about building a physique, attracting women, or having a productive / disciplined day. But then I came across Hamza's videos, and he made me realize that though I've gotten further along within my own personal development, it's not even close to his level. And that difference is where most of us tend to believe that change or growth takes a really long time. I disagree. What if we progressed with speed? I want to see how far I can take my personal development in 1 week by integrating Hamza's principles at full force. For those of you that don't know, Hamza is a self-improvement creator that has been absolutely dominating the YouTube platform, using his life as an example, evolving from a broken down Jeffrey into an ever-improving Adonis. He's managed to skyrocket his YouTube channel to about 1 million subscribers, and I have no doubt he's gonna blast right past that. With his stories and insight, he looks to guide young men towards developing their masculinity, building healthy relationships, improving their fitness, and strengthening their mental health. He aims to instill them with a lifelong mission to constantly pursue a sense of purpose and higher self. Now, I know that I mentioned that I'm in the process of improving myself, but for the last few weeks, I've been feeling like an absolute fucking loser. And that's because I can't seem to consistently prove to myself that I am disciplined outside of going to the gym every day. There will be some days where I come back from the gym and I'll take a nap. And then I'll press the snooze button for the next 2 to 3 hours, completely erasing the middle part of my day. And then after that, of course, just like anyone else, I'll have tasks to do, I'll have jobs to do, but I choose to procrastinate. I choose to break the promises to myself to be better. I'm regressing into some of my worst habits. And for the last few months, actually, it's been this constant cycle of progressing and then regressing between the same things. And it's absolutely fucking insane. And so I'm hoping to integrate Hamza's daily schedule to permanently break that cycle. Honestly, I'm probably just making this video to prove to myself that I'm way more capable than this. So this is what I found to be Hamza's current daily schedule. It starts around 5 a.m. and tends to end around 10 p.m., which is great because this is very similar to a schedule I developed for myself when I attempted to live like Alex Hormozi, $100 million CEO. I'm not going to do things exactly as Hamza does, but the same principles will apply. A morning routine, sessions of deep work, and a handful of few habits. Those habits being, which I don't do consistently at all, journaling, meditating, and reading. Outside of reading, I don't typically enjoy journaling or meditating because in my experience of trying them, they seem to just get in the way in terms of time I could be using elsewhere. But that's sort of the point, to kill the ego and to try new things in order to overcome others. It's about 5 a.m. Let's run it. It's time for the first new habit of the day, meditating, and I'm going to be using the framework for meditating that Hamza mentions in these 2 particular videos.
Meditation is the best, most important, most effective habit for your self-improvement. I want you now to think of meditation as the workout, the gym workout, and mindfulness as the gains. We meditate to increase our levels of mindfulness.
The idea is to focus on your breathing, but every time you start to linger or think thoughts outside of that, you refocus on your breathing and your senses, and that's 1 rep. I'm gonna try doing that for 10 minutes. The point being that I come out of this more present, but for me specifically, I want to use this to sort of quiet myself internally because I am a person that tends to constantly analyze or strategize in the background, which I actually think is a good thing, but that also means that I don't get to always completely mentally refresh. Well, that was probably one of the longer 10 minutes in my life. What's interesting to note though is I actually feel a little bit more mentally exhausted than I do invigorated, but I guess that's probably because it's only the first day out of a full week. Another thing that I found super interesting was that once I start to get in the groove of things, the groove of breathing, as I focused on my breathing, I was sort of walking this fine line between focusing and falling asleep. So I think that's something I'm gonna have to watch out for and build upon. So let's move on to some deep work. The first session of deep work is finished, and I think this is a good point to talk about the concept of having small wins throughout your day. Because I've managed to stay on task relative to my schedule, because I've consistently performed at my higher levels throughout the day so far, I am way more motivated to stay disciplined and to stay building momentum for the rest of the day. And I'm proving to myself continually throughout the day that I am capable of being that consistent and high level. And I'm telling you right now, it feels pretty damn good. After I became more familiar with Hamza's content, I realized that we actually share a lot of the same perspectives. One of his primary principles, and one that I really agree with, is that as a man, you should not only be competing with yourself, but with others as well.
This is something that most people won't tell you, but we as men are supposed to compete. That doesn't mean that you look at someone and say, wait, they're, a little bit better than me. No, you look at someone with a sense of aggression and think, I can do it better than he can. You get men who are similar to you, all racing for the same goal so that you can encourage and motivate and inspire each other.
This particular principle was one that I internalized ever since I was a young kid, because it was what allowed me to deeply learn, but at the same time facilitate the willpower to constantly improve, whether I knew that I was improving or not. More importantly, when you are surrounded by friends and peers that are at a higher level than you, and you tap into that aggression of wanting to be better than even them, you're gonna start developing the building blocks for a deep and real confidence inside of yourself. Because the only way you're going to succeed with that in mind is through action. You're literally forced to prove to yourself that you are capable. The truth is, competition is the harsh reality of the world, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Because whenever I compete and improve because of it, it's not one-sided. The people around me will also level up to some degree, and even more so if they reflect that same level of competitiveness. I got a full dose of this when I was part of a competitive dance team in college, but it was because of how competitive the environment there was that my teammates and I were able to excel and grow to levels that were way beyond what we could have done on our own and in a shorter amount of time. Competition is going to help you discover sides of yourself that you didn't even know you had. It's going to allow you to experience completely new perspectives in real time. And of course, it's going to force you to break your limits. I've found that competition is truly one of the few things that's going to give you so much of a direct opportunity to be better than you ever were before. All you have to do is choose to be. The second new habit of the day, reading. This isn't something that I'm unfamiliar with. I would say I'm a fairly avid reader, but recently I've been really focusing on reading books that are going to directly serve me relative to where I'm at in my life. I was reading the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene over the last few months. I still had to finish it, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to be reading The Way of the Superior Man by David Dita, because it seems that this particular book is one that Hamza really identifies with. So that's about a little over 30 minutes of reading for today. The feeling I get with reading is really awesome because it really covers up the feeling of when I'm doing nothing. Whenever I am doing nothing or feel like that, I can pick up a book and still make sure that the time I'm spending is productive, whether I know it affects me directly or not in the moment. And the last new habit is journaling. And of course, just like the others, I'll be using the frameworks from Hamza's videos to do it.
And now, how do you do deep journaling? This is something I recommend a lot on my channel. Deep journaling is very effective for anxiety and introspectiveness if you want to find yourself.
The idea with deep journaling is to really break down those thematic or repeating thoughts that you've been having recently or over longer periods of time. It's really about unraveling why you have your perspectives, how your thought processes work, and most importantly, what are your whys? And that's journaling done for the day. I wanted to point out that Hamza actually does both meditating and journaling / writing at the beginning of his day. And that's probably because these habits are really meant to empty and free your mind of any distracting thoughts and get you set up for the day. I decided to do meditating in the morning and journaling at night instead, because for me, I like to use meditation and what it seems to do for the most part to quiet myself and then have myself ready for the day in that way. And as I accumulate my thoughts and kind of gather what I want about myself throughout the day, that's where journaling at the end of the day comes in super handy for me, because I can just write it out. And before I go to bed, I don't go to bed with a noisy mind. I go with a peace and understanding of the next day and the steps to move forward. It's finally time to wind down and go to bed. Day one, honestly, was pretty good. I felt pretty productive and disciplined. I couldn't stick to the schedule as much as I wanted to because one, I was recording B-roll of everything I was doing today, and two, life's errands tends to get in the way. Like I had to pick up my car from the shop, which is good though now because I can actually go places. But it did get in the way, and it was a little annoying to have those things get in the way. But also because I was trying to stick to a schedule and stay on task, which for the most part, I think I did fairly well despite all the things I just mentioned. I was able to really identify what parts of my day are useless and what I can cut down or say no to more often, and take those direct steps towards where I want to improve. It's day 4. We're a little over halfway into this lifestyle challenge, and I will be honest with you, it was a bit difficult to get acclimated to the schedule because of all the habits that I had to insert throughout the day. Day 2 was by far the most difficult, but also the most progressive day that I've had so far, because trying to live with this schedule really made me aware of when and at what point of my day I'm wasting time. And I'm not talking about wasting time by doing extra unnecessary tasks, but by the subtleties within each task. For example, the way I cook meals is extremely inefficient because I don't prep much, or when I eat, it takes me as long to eat as it does to finish whatever video I'm watching at the time. And sometimes when it comes to deep work, it takes me up to 15 minutes to even get started on doing whatever it is I have to do. So day 3 was much more focused on eliminating those insufficiencies. And because of that, today, day 4 has been so much more of a groove of things. Like the flow of today feels extremely nice, and I'm just ripping through whatever it is I have to do. As for the habits themselves, I'm still not very fond of meditating itself, but what helps me and what I noticed as I went through some of Hamza's older videos is that he tends to meditate outside in the sunlight. And so I started doing that on day 3, and for whatever reason, my meditation, my state of being as I do it just kind of took off from there. I've created more of a deep rhythm for breathing, and it feels like I'm doing heavier reps when it comes to pulling myself back into the present from lingering thoughts. And now I don't come out of my meditation with a little bit of mental exhaustion or sleepiness. It feels as if I'm going through a state of simple, quiet harmony. Not peace, but harmony. Reading, I've always loved, so that's just been getting better and better with the daily consistency. As for journaling, I think I've developed this newfound love for it. And that's because the more analytical side of me really gets to completely flex its muscles, but then rest immediately, especially because I've scheduled my journaling to be right before I go to bed. It's interesting because when you normally go to sleep, you just go to sleep. But for me recently, I've been feeling a lot more internal strength, a lot more of a completeness when I go to bed. And I think that's because the journaling has helped me come to understand or be more vulnerable with my thoughts and with myself, really, before I go to bed. And I just go through the night with a lot more clarity and wake up with that same clarity, which also just gives me a boost for the next day. One aspect of Hamza's content that I really enjoy is the fact that he takes the time to speak about perspectives that live in most men's minds and then becomes a voice for it. Here's one particular perspective that I fully align with.
And this is for men and women, because you'll get crucified if you talk about this online. You'll get crucified if you say, like, I want to be more attractive. I go to the gym to increase my sexual market value so that I can attract more women and like higher quality women. You're not allowed to talk about this. And I think that's so toxic, because we have a few big desires inside of us.
As he says, and I fully believe, you should want to do things in order to become more attractive to the opposite sex. You should operate to some degree from the desire of wanting to be better in order to attract women. Now, of course, your purpose, your self-work is first, but your desire for intimate relationships is probably second, and you should be taking advantage of that. Tapping into that desire is only going to help you because it's going to give you a second source of energy to pull from. A good real life example of this is my experience at the gym. Sometimes I'll go through a workout with a lesser amount of willpower than I usually have. And it's not because my desire for building a physique is dwindling. It's probably because I just didn't want to do it for whatever reason that day. Maybe it truly was an off day and I'm just lacking energy. But every now and then, a pretty gym girl will end up walking by and will make eye contact for, I don't know, a split second or so. And almost instantly, I'm back in the zone, and sometimes even more than I ever was for the few days before. Now, while I do believe in this idea, there are two things that need to be kept in mind. One, don't become a creepy guy, bro, which will happen if your leading intentions are primarily to get with the girl. As strong of a desire as this is, it should never be more than secondary and always behind your self-work / purpose. And two, you should to some extent be satisfying that desire by interacting with the woman that you want in person. Hey, excuse me. Nice to meet you. I'm Anuj. I just wanted to let you know I thought you were extremely attractive and gorgeous.
Thank you.
And I was wondering, I'm new to the area. Do you live in downtown San Diego?
I don't. I'm from Australia.
Oh, you're from Australia?
Yeah, so
Okay, okay,
I'll
awesome.
help you with anything.
Okay, I see. Okay, I'm from around here, but I'm from north in San Diego.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering if you'd be open to getting a drink sometime or something like that.
Possibly.
Yeah?
I'm late for reservation, but I'm
Okay.
not in the town. Well, I leave tonight.
Oh, you leave
Probably
tonight?
won't get-
Okay. Well, how about this? You take my number,
Okay.
and if you're in town, you can hit me up.
Okay.
Yeah?
That's fine. We can.
He gets credit for doing that.
Yeah. I feel like you gotta give.
I'm trying my best. You
I'll
know?
give credit where credit's
Like I said, new to the
due.
area. Huh?
So, yeah. I'll give credit where credit's
Hey,
due.
thank you. I appreciate that.
I like
that.
him, man. Listen to the whole thing.
Thank you.
That was smooth and
There you
Get
go.
it.
Interacting with the woman that you want, no matter what stage you're at, is going to push you to be more receptive, to be more intelligent as a genuine human being. And more importantly, as a man, it's going to instill a certain undeniable confidence inside of you because you know that you're that guy. Whether you close with that woman or not does not matter. And I'm not saying that just because. I'm saying that because it all comes back to proving to yourself that you are capable. And with that newly found internal strength, you are moving forward. It's actually day 10. I just didn't get a chance to film on day 7 because of other priorities that came up. But this is going to be a good thing because I'm going to reflect up until day 7 and then kind of explain how that tapped into day 8, 9, and 10. So there's this exercise I've been doing with one of my mentors. His name is Nikhil. Some of you probably know him as Captain Sinbad on YouTube, where every night I send him a rating between 1 and 10, but that rating is based on the question, have I done everything that I possibly could have done today towards my long-term goal? And when you start to rate yourself with that concept in mind, you start to become hyper aware of how you're using your time and where every minute is allocated, whether it's just walking from one room over to the next, or if it's like a dedicated period to deep work. And that in and of itself is a great great indicator of how integrating Hamza's schedule has affected my life. I'll list the ratings of each day up here on the screen. The first day was a 7, which is pretty good, but that's only because it had to be. I had to film B-roll of everything that I was doing while putting into action the new habits and the new schedule implementation. So I would consider that first day an exception, because you'll notice that days 2, 3, 4, and 5 were all pretty much below the ratings of a 5. And that's not because I didn't wake up at 5 a.m. It's not because I couldn't keep to my timely schedule. It's not because I wasn't putting in the work. It was because in order to make space for the new habits that I wanted to implement, I had to eliminate the older habits / inefficiencies that I caught myself doing throughout the day. I was essentially forced to do some level of life cleansing, and because of that, I had to dedicate a good amount of time to re-evaluating how I move throughout the day, and then at the same time create new systems that work for the better of me. After all of which, I found my life completely speeding up. There was less friction. What I mean by that is that there was a much more targeted and deep focus that I found flowing throughout my day. And I found myself distracted from distractions because there was work to do, and I committed myself to that work whether I wanted to do it or not. And you'll see that in the ratings reflected in day 6 and 7. Day 6 was an 8 and day 7 was a 6. Day 7 was a 6 because a shoot didn't work out as well as it should have. We still got work done, but we couldn't do everything that we wanted to. So I just knocked it down from an 8 to a 6, but essentially it was an 8. And the reason they just skyrocketed up from the 3s and 4s is because I was finally able to get in the zone of just focusing on the tasks at hand. My life was so much more organized, and I didn't have to worry about those inefficiencies or those bad habits coming in the way. And the momentum has only been building from there. The productivity and the discipline that I have now is at the best it's ever been so far. And even the quality of my work has leveled up significantly. Hopefully this video is a good example of that. My days seem to have much more weight to them. And that feeling of knowing that I made the day intentionally count is probably one of the most addictive feelings I've ever felt. Something else interesting that I noticed from this week is that the momentum in my life and how fast it builds seems to be guided by / refined by the cycle that occurs between the habits of meditating, reading, and journaling. It starts with meditating in the morning, which seems to completely refresh my mind, bring it back to ground zero, and then reading during the evenings, which will stimulate and educate my mind outwardly in completely new ways with completely new perspectives. But then at night, journaling kind of closes it all together, where it'll realign everything that I've received throughout the day towards my goals, both internally and externally. Now, I'm still not very fond of meditating, but I'm way more accepting of it now, and I can't deny the fact that it seems to bring about this major positive force that I can't explain outside of an internal quiet harmony. So I'll keep it up until I outgrow it or find something more suitable. I think a good switch up for me will be somehow mixing visualization into that, because visualization is where I tend to excel at. As for reading, always a plus. It's only been better than it was before. And as for journaling, I've actually grown quite fond of it because 1, it's extremely cool to look back at, and 2, your ability to internalize the growth and the changes that you want to pursue becomes amplified immensely. I finished The Way of the Superior Man, and it's easy to see why Hamza identifies with the book so much. I myself identify quite a bit with it as well, particularly the principles mentioned in the chapter, restore your purpose through solitude and with other men. The chapter itself discusses how you can restore your masculine edge through austerity and through challenge, but this one particular paragraph spoke to me. By eliminating the safety net of comforts in your life, you have the opportunity to free fall in this moment between birth and death, right through the hole of your fear, into the unthreatenable openness which is the source of your gifts. The superior man lives as the spontaneous sacrifice of love. Now, when you read it at first, it is a little abstract, but this is how I interpreted and resonated with it. By removing your safety nets, you allow yourself to operate at your highest capabilities because you allow yourself to fully experience the fears that you have, giving you the opportunity to overcome. In turn, which then allows you to fully experience the depth of your courage, which then once again gives you another opportunity to actualize your potential in real time. And this cycle of facing fear to discover courage at all levels, all of which, by the way, will provide you with the truest opportunities for massive self-improvement, is key to constant growth in any endeavor. I believe this video, this journey that I've been showing you for the last 7 to 10 days is a good example of this. It started with self-doubt, and I let that out in frustration rather than fear, but the idea is that they both create a wall in front of you. However, by openly going through the motions, attempting the habits that I don't have the best ideas of, and learning of my deficiencies, whether I want to admit them or not, has allowed me to step into the higher level of myself and at a faster pace than I've ever done before. By the way, all of which has forced me to learn to open myself up to myself and hopefully a bit more to others, giving me so much more access to what I have to offer in a more powerful way. And I hope that you can take advantage of that as well. Because the better versions of you, the one that steps into fear, no matter what form it takes to discover courage, will always better those around them, and by extension, the world that surrounds them. In the beginning of this video, I talked about growing and changing in speed, and I can honestly say that the lessons I learned from integrating Hamza's schedule into my own have not only changed the trajectory of my life for the better, but it's also increased the rate at which I accelerate forward. What I mean by that is that because of the process that I had to go through in the last 7 to 10 days, I've had to really sharpen my ability to recognize my faults, my inefficiencies holistically throughout all aspects in my life, not just certain ones, holistically. And then had to hone in on my ability to eliminate them as fast as possible. And because of that, that cycle that I mentioned of progressing and regressing, I've slingshotted right out of. And I say that confidently because the last 7 to 10 days had me make the direct shifts in my life that forced me to shed the lower tier parts of myself in order to facilitate the better parts of myself at a higher level. And while of course I still have so much to improve upon, I hope that this video illustrated that concept, the concept of speed in growth, rooted in sacrificing the old you for the better you. So that was how Hamza managed to affect my life for the better, and I hope this video inspires you to change yours for the better as well. And if it did, subscribe because I'd love to have you. We're on the same journey, and to those of us that choose to improve despite the frustrations, the fears, the flaws, that choose courage, it's time to skyrocket.